When looking at the map of a country, it's natural to assume a country's territory is continuous, meaning what's inside the continuous boundary is usually the country's complete territory. While this is true for many countries, there are many exceptions too. For example, a country can have islands alongside its main part, which makes its territory geographically separate. This is fairly common for island countries and countries with coastlines. What's not common and far more interesting is for some countries, some parts of their territory is separate from its main part and surrounded by another country or countries. As a result, there is no easy way to access that part of the country on land without entering another country first. It's like an island of the country but on land. This phenomenon is called exclave, and today we're going to look at some interesting exclaves around the world. Starting with the United States, a common and easy to understand example is the state of Alaska. It's an exclave of the United States. It's surrounded by the Arctic Ocean and Pacific Ocean on water and Canada on land. To access Alaska on land from the contiguous United States, you have to cross Canada first, then enter Alaska. Again, this is a common and well-known example. A more interesting one is this place called Point Roberts that belongs to the state of Washington. From the map, you can see that the US-Canada border perfectly cuts Point Roberts off from the rest of the US, making it possible to access on land from the US mainland without crossing through Canada first. Some other exclaves of the United States happen to be in the state of Minnesota. This tiny exclave called Elm Point is separate from the rest of the US by the Musket Bay, but it's connected to Canada on land. So the only land access into Elm Point is through Canada. Just about a mile to its west, there are these two exclaves called Buffalo Point Bay that are also cut off from the rest of the US land. Moving not far from Elm Point, there is another exclave called Northwest Angle. This piece of land is separated from the mainland by the Lake of the Woods and thus has no land contact with the rest of the country. The only way to access it on land is again through Canada. By this point, you have probably realized that, like Point Roberts, these exclaves are also the interesting products of the mostly straight US-Canada border, which does have a pattern of cutting through pretty much everything in its way. Now, enough for North America. Heading down to South America. Another interesting exclave is French Guiana. Though being a French territory, it's located on the northeast coast of South America, thousands of kilometers away from Europe, surrounded by Suriname and Brazil on land and Atlantic Ocean on water. The only way to access French Guiana on land is through Suriname or Brazil. This creates many interesting effects. To start, the longest land border France shares with another country is the one between French Guiana and Brazil, followed by the border between French Guiana and Suriname. Furthermore, since French Guiana is part of France and France is part of European Union, this means people living in French Guiana use the euros as their currency and benefit from welfare system of the European Union. Finally, the largest national park in the European Union, the Guiana Amazonian Park, is actually not in Europe but in French Guiana, a piece of land in the continent of South America. Something unique and fascinating about France is that when it comes to exclaves or territories that are geographically separate from its home country, France is really the gold mine of such interesting phenomena. Besides French Guiana, these islands called Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, south of Canadian islands of Newfoundland, are French territories. The northern side of this island called Saint Martin on the edge of Caribbean Sea is also French territory. In fact, France has so many overseas territories around the world that Asia is the only continent where France does not have any overseas territory. Moving on to European continent, there's a place of land at the southern tip of Spain that is actually a British exclave. This is the city of Gibraltar. It's surrounded by Spain on the north and the Strait of Gibraltar on the south. The only way to access this place on land is through Spain. Though this small exclave is only about the size of two New York Central Parks, its strategic impact to UK and people living in it is significant. To start, because it's pretty much located at the narrow choke point of the Strait of Gibraltar, which connects the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, the UK has used Gibraltar to control the sea lanes into and out of the Mediterranean Sea since its establishment in 1704. For people living in it, since it's still part of the UK, this means people living in this tiny exclave still speak English and use the British pound as the main currency, while people outside of the exclave speak Spanish and use the euro. However, since the UK is not a Schengen member state and Spain is, crossing the Gibraltar-Spain border has been a complicated process, as both sides insist on employing different customs control agencies to regulate traffic into and out of Gibraltar, leading to traffic delays and even disputes between two sides. Though negotiations have been made to make Gibraltar act like a Schengen area to minimize this friction, none of which have entered into force as of now. Gibraltar is an interesting exclave, but it's not the only exclave alongside the Strait of Gibraltar. Spain also has 3 exclaves at the northern coast of the African continent. They are Ceuta, Melilla, and Peñón de Valls de la Gomera, all located within Morocco. The most interesting one out of the 3 has to be Peñón de Valls de la Gomera. It's a tiny tidal island that extends out of Morocco's coast. It's so small that it's only about 0.5% the size of the New York Central Park. Moreover, the land border between Spain and Morocco is only about 80 meters long. That is about the length of 17 Toyota Corollas lined up together, making it one of the shortest international land borders in the world. Despite the fact that it's a tiny exclave that's barely connecting to the African continent, its geopolitical value to Spain still remains significant, as it has been used by Spain to assert maritime control over the nearby region. In fact, Spain takes the territorial control of this tiny exclave so seriously that the only personnel living in it have always been Spanish military and will probably remain this status for the foreseeable future. Sometimes, to make a region exclave doesn't even require the region being geographically separate from its home country. Klein-Wassertal is a region nested in the Austrian Alps, renowned for its stunning landscapes. However, what makes Klein-Wassertal truly unique is its status as an exclave of Austria. Despite being located entirely within the Vorarlberg region of Austria, Klein-Wassertal is geographically isolated from the rest of the country due to its mountainous terrain and lack of direct road access. Instead, the only way to reach this place by land is through this road from Germany, making it an interesting geographic anomaly in the heart of the Alps. The last exclave we're going to look at is the most unique one so far because it doesn't exist anymore. Well, it only existed in the past. That is Berlin, or West Berlin to be accurate. You see, following World War II, Germany was divided into 4 occupation zones, with Berlin itself divided into 4 sectors controlled by the Allied powers of the United States, United Kingdom, France, and Soviet Union. As tensions between the Western Allies and the Soviet Union escalated, the sectors controlled by the Allied forces emerged as West Berlin, an exclave of West Germany, surrounded by East Germany and the Soviet-controlled territory of East Berlin. This divide between socialism in the East and capitalism in the West within one city became so strong over the years that it led to the erection of the infamous Berlin Wall by East Germany. According to East Germany, the wall was built to prevent the infiltration of Western world, but more importantly, to prevent East German citizens from defecting to the West. Because of this wall, unlike other exclaves that welcomed the movement of people from within and outside of the home country, there was a very complex process for people from West Germany to visit West Berlin, and it was nearly impossible and life-threatening for East German citizens to enter West Berlin by crossing the wall. In fact, out of 10,000 people who attempted to defect to West Berlin over the years, only over 5,000 people succeeded, with an estimated death toll of those murdered by East German authorities ranging from 136 to more than 200 in and around Berlin. Despite its geographic isolation and challenges it faced during the Cold War era, West Berlin thrived as a symbol of resilience and freedom in the heart of the communist East Germany. The existence of this exclave came to an end in 1994 when the Berlin Wall was completely demolished. Today, while Berlin is no longer an exclave, its history as a divided city continues to shape its identity and contributes to its rich cultural landscape. As we conclude our exploration of these fascinating geographic anomalies, one thing becomes abundantly clear. The borders between countries and regions are far more complex than they initially seem. From tiny exclaves nested within larger countries to isolated territories with unique history, the exclave we've discovered today offer a glimpse into the diverse landscape of our world. As you continue to explore the world around you, remember to keep an eye out for these hidden gems that make our world so dynamic and intriguing. Thank you for watching this video. Have a great day.